It endgame Justin Trudeau? There had been a lot of criticism on a lot of issues, and not from India this time, remember, but within domestic politics itself, that there was rising criticism. And now, according to information coming in, basically how the news reports that are surfacing, that amid a deteriorating Canadian economy, mounting pressure, that Trudeau is likely to quit as the Liberal Party leader, and that could happen in the next few hours. Remember, this comes days after the finance minister resigned after a spat with him over Trump tariff. Trudeau already had been in troubled times. 20 of his MPs in the government have vowed to actually change the government, topple it, and are extremely angry with him over the handling of the economy. Trudeau, remember, has had a tumultuous equation with India ever since he's accused the Indian government of killing a Khalistani separatist. But apart from that, recent statements by Donald Trump as well, US President-elect, shows what his plans could be for Canada. Joining me now is my colleague Shashank Mattu, who closely tracks the foreign affairs, and also a special guest joining me, Daniel Boardman. And I must say, Daniel, this time you are in the Indian time zone, and therefore, good morning, Daniel, and welcome to India. But let me help understand what is your view on this, because it's still a developing story, and we do not know when it may happen. But why do you think it's happening that Justin Trudeau couldn't really hold back eventually?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, and thanks for welcoming me to India. It's nice to be in the same time zone, so this is far less confusing on my end. In terms of, Justin Trudeau, how do we get here? He's in the middle of so many crazy scandals that would have broken any other government in any other point of Canadian history. So the fact that he lost as a finance minister and deputy prime minister, where he was firing her from finance minister and wanted to make her like minister of sitting in the corner and doing nothing. And then she pulled the "you can't fire me, I quit" routine, and then sort of broke the Liberal Party into sort of two factions. And loosely it's said, okay, so Trudeau's faction, and the head of Trudeau's faction is Katie Telford, who is his chief of staff, and she runs a sort of unelected, you would describe as loosely, you could say like deep state or Canada deep province, where it's sort of the unelected power holders who sort of brought Trudeau up in the sort of like the prime minister's office, and those people holding power. And then you have the other faction, which are represented by Chrystia Freeland, and that's like the elected faction of the Liberals. So these are the sort of discontented MPs, and they don't like Trudeau right now, not because he's ruined Canada or any of the stuff. It's because he's sort of sidelined and taken power from them, and he's made their re-election nearly impossible and ruined the brand of the Liberal Party. So they're not happy because their future and the future of the Liberal Party and their political careers are in jeopardy. So with these two factions like openly at odds with each other, and the fact that we have a minority government to begin with, so he doesn't have a majority even with just his own party. So he's dealing with a complete schism in his own party from a minority position where he's just propped up by the NDP. It's a completely untenable situation. However, I'm not 100% convinced that Justin Trudeau is going to resign, which would be for us in India here later tonight, when it hits Monday. Now, if he does resign, I'll be very happy. There's this weird scenario where he could resign as leader of the Liberal Party, but not as prime minister, which again is an absolute absurdity. And it's like technically he can do this, but no one ever would. But again, that's the Justin Trudeau way: is no one should ever really do this. You can't do this, but then he does it, and the media covers for him. So it's a very, very weird situation in Canada where, and as Trudeau critics, you have to, because there's been rumors of Trudeau resigning or stepping down before, and I've always taken the "I'll believe it when I see it" approach to this.
Very interesting. It could, it would definitely be embarrassing as and when this happens, if not today, possibly tomorrow. I bring in now my colleague Shashank on this. Shashank, good morning. What are you hearing? What are the news reports surfacing? Any timeline? And what precisely has led him to take this step?
Well, I think as Daniel has pointed out, I think it's a lot of pressure from, first of all, members of the Liberal Party of Canada. You look at the poll numbers and they're quite startling. 73% of Canadians at this point in time think that Trudeau should resign as leader of the Liberal Party. Numerous surveys are coming out saying that really barely double digits of the population support him, wanted to stay on as prime minister. Around 13% of the population will support the Liberal Party if Trudeau stays on as prime minister. But if the leader changes, Canadians are willing to change their mind a little bit as well when it comes to the Liberal Party. Perhaps not enough to win them the election, but enough to do a better job at the polls. So that is certainly the political pressure that's coming from his party, as well as the recognition that it is Trudeau himself who has become personally extremely unpopular because of policies that have been associated with him. He has a carbon tax that he's introduced that has made him extremely unpopular. The economy has suffered. Immigration, Canada opened its doors very visibly as a policy that was associated with
Correct.
his political legacy. And that has become increasingly unpopular. He's had to backtrack on that. So he's become personally unpopular. The polls are showing it. He's lost support. And as Daniel was mentioning, he's lost the support of really one of his key political allies, his key political lieutenants, Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. He was seen to be hanging her out to dry because the fiscal deficit situation in Canada has been getting worse. So really, it's policy mismanagement. There's a sense that he's not to be trusted anymore by
Okay.
the general public in Canada. So the narrative as well as public support has gone against him.
And
That's why
something that he's not been able to resolve. Stay on with me, Shashank. I go to Daniel on this. Daniel, then what happens? As in when the resignation does come in, let's assume it is happening in the days to come. Is it going to be early elections right away? Is it going to be advantage Pierre Poilievre if it happens right now? And where does this Jagmeet Singh figure really come in at this point?
Yeah, so I mean, what should happen is if he resigns as leader or as prime minister, like there should be like again, there's this weird thing where I guess he could resign as leader of the Liberal Party, stay on as prime minister, propped up by Jagmeet Singh, for another month to get towards his pension, to give the Liberals enough time to hold a leadership election, to throw someone new in there for the election. You know, it's such an absurd thing. Like literally, honestly, if he does resign as in either thing, it should break the government and trigger an election and do all that. Like again, we're in such uncharted territory. He's so deeply unpopular. There's so many scandals. He should resign, but he's not. So I mean, the Jagmeet factor is, Jagmeet, and it's so clear the Conservative Party is going to win a supermajority. The current projections is the separatist Bloc Québécois, which only runs federal politics in one province, Quebec. They're projected to be the second party in Canada. So that's just how deeply unpopular the Liberals and the NDP are.
Okay.
I mean, the NDP, they're really flirting with disaster because the Liberals are projected to be in fourth place. And the NDP is a joke of a party, but they risk, if they continue to prop up this Trudeau government in the way that they are doing, they risk becoming such a toxic brand and associated with all the toxicity over the last 10 years that for the long-term health of the party, they might want to decouple themselves from the Liberals. But again, we're in such uncharted territory. We've never had two leaders like Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau before running the country. So I will believe it when I see it. And if he does end up resigning, you're all invited to the party I will be throwing all throughout India. So just come onto the streets of Mumbai. I'll be there, and there'll be much rejoicing.
All right, so it remains to be seen who is going to be partying as and when that happens, and what does it really mean for Canada. Daniel, stay on with me, because you mentioned India here. Eventually, remember, for the Indians watching right now, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been unlike any other Prime Minister of Canada that India has had to deal with. What have been some of those contentious issues that India and Canada have had friction with, especially since Trudeau took over? Now, remember, Canada harboring Khalistan extremists and gangsters has been something that India, not just with Trudeau, even when his father was the Prime Minister, has been updating. It's been a long-standing issue that it appears Canada just does not want to take seriously. Attacks on Canadian Hindu temples, the graffitis, the kind of defecation that we had seen around these areas, and it looked like in most cases nobody then eventually was arrested. But it led to a full-blown showdown when Trudeau, and literally as a Prime Minister himself, not through anybody else, said that India or Indian agents are behind Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing, and that was done by unknown gunmen. And also remember, the Khalistani extremist, a designated terrorist by India, for which Canadian government was standing by. And this sort of stand has led trouble between India and Canada, despite India giving dossiers after dossier to Canada to help them understand what is happening on their soil. That led to, remember, raging diplomatic war with India, not just with regards to consulates and high commissioners who were being pulled back. Visa issues also suffered and led to mutual expulsion of the senior diplomats. But especially for Indian diplomats, remember, there was another concern of threats of possibly assassination attempts being done against them. visa hiccup that we saw that possibly affected students and tourists as much, but also this kind of interchange that is coming into the place. So Shashank, I take that question to you, that for now there's no involvement of India, I hope, for Justin Trudeau in this, but it's Canada-India's relationship, how it was and how it could be after Trudeau, will play also an important role, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Look, I think India will be watching this change in the governmental structure in Canada very closely. There is a widespread acknowledgement, I think, in India that until the government in Canada changes, that is, the party changes, bilateral relations between India and Canada are not going to improve simply because Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is again too personally tied in to the fact that he put his name and his political credibility behind the allegations that he made in September 2023 that the Indian government or agents of the Indian government were involved in political assassinations on Canadian soil. He has put his personal credibility to it, and his government or any government associated with him cannot back off now. Now, the sense among Indians is that, okay, can a different government, conservative government led by Pierre Poilievre, which, as Daniel was saying, could come into power very likely, how have they dealt with this issue? They have expressed their concerns about some of the allegations that have been made by the Canadian security agencies, but very importantly, Pierre Poilievre, who is likely to take over as Prime Minister if the next elections take place soon, has said very clearly that we need to deal with India professionally. He's been asked several times, and that's always been his answer. We must be professional in our dealings with India, which could be taken to be that, issues like intelligence matters and sensitive matters like this need to be dealt in behind closed doors by governments, but given how sensitive these issues
And
are,
let's hope, if,
then
when not Justin Trudeau, Shashank, that the next Prime Minister, whoever that would be, perhaps will be more mature in dealing with these sensitive issues, especially when it comes to law and order, extremism, terrorism. And what Pierre Poilievre said is fair. It has to be professional. Who wants a personal connection? It is eventually about trying to understand that these relationships stand mature as two nations, independent with their policies. I appreciate both of you gentlemen for joining us, Daniel and Shashank, and it's a developing story, so we'll come back to as and when more updates coming in. I have more news coming in. Let's take a look at that.